Let's talk to Eddie now in Richmond, Virginia, listening to XL 102. Eddie, you're on the rock line.
Hey, guys, how's it going?
Okay.
A little different question for you all. What do you all do when you're, socializing off the stage and, do you party? Do you get the limousines, or you guys just seeing the sights type?
We usually are extremely tired after a show, but we manage to jump into a limo and run back to the hotel and try on, open a box and put on a hat and stand in front of the mirror and look at it.
Having some kind of fun now, huh?
To Night Thoughts, The Cars podcast. The Panorama's #1 source for news, reviews, and thoughts about the new wave rock legends, The Cars. Oh, and a little bit of Seawolf, Sunshine and Rainbows.
Welcome to Night Thoughts, The Cars podcast, episode 44. I'm Dave. Becky Broderick. She was the true love of Benjamin Orr. Graphic paid for.
That's kind of a hefty price.
Well, I told her I'd say it.
Okay.
And with me is Donna, the sweet purple June, the only person to have indexed Benjamin Orr's life. Aww. Who can say that, right?
That's true. Yes, yeah. Becky may have been the love of his life, but did she index him? I don't think so.
Did she index him? Yeah.
Hi, everybody.
So here we are at part 2 of our Let's Go with Joe episode. So let's get to the business so we can get into it.
All right.
Hey, you can find us on Facebook. Search for The Cars Night Thoughts. We'll be there. Follow us on Twitter at The Cars Podcast. Grab yourself a podcast t-shirt at tpublic.com/user/Night Thoughts. Write us an email, nightthoughtspodcast@gmail.com. And please, however you're listening to us, iTunes, SoundCloud, or YouTube, make sure to subscribe and leave a review. And, of course, we're promoting Dave Juskow and Mem Salazar's epic film, Turbocharged, The Unauthorized Story of the Cars. You can see clips, photos, and updates at fb.me/Turbocharge the movie. Or you can visit the official site at turbochargethemovie.com.
And while you're online, check out www.benorbook.com to learn more information about Let's Go, Benjamin Orr and the Cars by Joe Milliken, which is the topic of our show tonight.
Okay, so Donna, we got some news here. Well, I don't know if it's news, but I've got a few things to talk about before we get into this episode. Okay. The first thing is, if you remember, a year ago, you sent me that CD of Christmas music.
Yes.
And you kind of got on my back because I didn't listen through it all. And I've done it this year. I had it in the car a week.
Why did I send it to you?
I don't even remember. To abuse me?
Well, because you were bagging on Christmas music, on rock stars and people remaking Christmas songs.
Yeah, don't get me started. I still feel the same way.
All right, so I had to send you the CD.
I remember I admitted if Rick Ocasek or the Cars put out a Christmas CD, I'd buy it.
Yes,
but
yes.
That doesn't mean I'd be happy with it. But, once again, I came and listened to it this week, and I swear to you, Donna, it makes me laugh uncontrollably. Track number 3 on this CD you sent me. Do you remember what track number 3 is?
No, I don't. What is it?
Oh, come. We're not going to take it, all ye faithful.
It's the best.
This is the most ridiculous song ever. Because all it is we're not going to take it, and they throw in, oh, come all ye faithful. So by the time it gets to this part, all I'm doing is I'm yelling, you're all worthless and weak at Christmas.
Oh, that's awesome.
So there you go.
No Christmas Boogie by Canned Heat, that wasn't doing it for you?
No.
Okay.
No.
That would have been the holiday follow-up to The Boots by Benjamin Orr. It would have been.
For the love of God, no. That one's ridiculous, like the Twisted Sister one, but in a different way.
Well, like I said, I'm glad you gave it a listen, and I appreciate that. Now it can be part of your traditions every year, though. You can go out and hate it every year.
I can abuse myself every year.
That's right. And know that it's from me.
Yeah, that's right. So I was thinking this week about what you had said about the serendipity. I have a hard time saying this word. The serendipitous nature of the Cars, with Ben being in Life magazine and Dave Robinson, saying that and so forth.
Yeah.
And I wanted to throw some other ones at you.
Okay? Oh, okay.
Okay. These are all facts, straight facts.
Oh, boy.
Okay. Fact number 1. In Boston, Rick Ocasek once ate a deli sandwich. I think it was a Reuben that was made by a friend of a friend of a friend of the guy who made Ben's stage flip-flops. That's serendipity.
Grown.
I'm just saying. Fact number 2.
Oh, boy.
All right. Fact number 2. Elliot Easton's barber was a third cousin twice removed to the guy David Robinson bought his pinup art from. That is serendipity.
All right.
It's a fact. Okay?
Okay.
Greg Hawk's saxophone. He bought it secondhand. It was originally owned by a guy who bought it from the same music store who once told Rick, "Hey, Stretch, are you going to buy something? Get the fuck out of here. You're creeping out my customers." That's serendipity.
Oh, at its finest.
And the most mind-blowing of all, Donna.
Oh, boy.
It's a fact. In 1977, while the Cars were recording their debut album, they were on their way to dinner. They had trouble hailing a cabbie, because it's a different country and so forth. And coincidentally, Phil Collins was in town performing with Genesis. And one thing led to another. He graciously offered to share a ride with the boys. And when they asked him how they could repay him, Phil Collins said, "Oh, I'm sure something will come up." Collins!
Oh, my gosh.
Yep. There you go.
That's pretty good. Stretch. Hey, Stretch.
Stretch. You gonna buy something or what? Get the fuck out of here. You're creeping my customers out. Did you see Rick's hanging out in the music shop?
Yeah. Totally
looking for new talent.
In his black clothes.
That mustache. Hey, you're creeping people out with your mustache. Get out of here.
Oh, that's awesome.
Okay. So let's get into our topic. One of the first things I want to talk about were I don't want to say reviews, but just how some people have reacted to the book.
The feedback,
and
whatever.
The feedback of the book. Thank you. And I think I mentioned I can't remember what page it was on, but I had mentioned to Joe about I found it interesting how, some of these people that got review copies or whatever, gave it like 3 stars or 4 stars, but they don't really say anything negative about it. I just think that's kind of weird.
Yeah.
If you're gonna notch it down a star, then you need to say why. They don't,
Right.
But with the Fanorama, I think some people are coming off like it was just that it was too clean. I've heard that.
Right.
And I keep thinking, what do they expect? Because, here you have a guy, meaning Joe, who has no connection to Benjamin Orr whatsoever. Mm-hmm. It's not like Joe was his best friend from 7th grade and wrote a book about Benjamin Orr.
Right.
He had to go and make connections with people who cold connections with people who knew the man. And he has to gain their trust just to talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so even with that trust, do you think these people are going to talk negative about, Benjamin, or give, bad Benjamin stories?
Right.
And, the other thing is it's really a catch-22, because if it was a negative piece, imagine the backlash that he would get from the Orbots who, view Benjamin as this perfect man,
Right.
I just don't know what people want, when they say, do they want to know? Well, do they want to know about, his sex life? Do they want to know about, arguments that he had with people? Do they want to know about, him, being at his lowest point in his life? I don't get it.
Well, and I think they do. I think that there's a difference between, like, Joe could have written a negative piece. He still could have written a positive piece, but exposed all sorts of things that he shouldn't expose, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, I do think that there are people who wanted to hear more about, if he was a cheater, and who he slept with, and how many people he slept with, and how much he drank, and did he do drugs, and when you say he partied, what do you mean he partied, and how did his wife feel about that, and what is, they want to know the gossip, they want to know the dirt, and they're disappointed that it's not revealing that side of Benjamin's life.
Yeah, and I just don't see that. I just think there's some things that just aren't our business.
Right. Particularly because Ben's not here. Because, you'll read books about, like Kiss and Queen and, all of these other, where usually the person has a hand in it. And so they're happy to tell their stories. Slash's book was, wow. So they get to reveal what they want to reveal. But Ben's not here to say, hey, I didn't want anybody to know that.
Yeah.
Or, could you not talk about me like that? Because, I'm a guy and I live my life and I didn't do it in front of a camera on purpose,
Yeah. And the thing about it is, unless Joe interviewed someone who had a legitimate beef with Ben Orr, there's not going to be that much negativity.
Right.
It's not like, he's searching out the kid that, Ben beat the shit out of in high school. It's not like Joe went and tried to find Fonzie on the Cleveland street corner.
Right.
to get his side of the knife incident.
Right.
It's you're not going to have that much negativity to begin with.
Right.
But, I respect Joe's decision to, keep in mind that, his son's going to read this book.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the theme. The theme of the book is not all the excess or, rock star excess or whatever. The theme of the book is what a down to earth, nice guy Benjamin Orr was.
Right.
And he stuck with that theme. And that's what it is. And beyond that, it's a reference to his life from, his age of 13 when he started with bands all the way to the end.
Right.
That's, just how you got to look at it.
Well, and here's the thing that I think Joe did really well, though, because I felt like he was still honest about who Ben was, because there were statements in there about, he was a ladies' man and the women were hanging around him, or, you get a quote from a woman that said, Ben was a really romantic person, and, or that he was enjoying the rock and roll lifestyle. There were hints that, that Ben wasn't perfect. So he was truthful about who Ben was, but it wasn't an expose. It wasn't let's find out all the details about it. It was just an acknowledgement of he was a human being and he was a rock star, and there's these other sides to that.
Yeah.
And he, he indulged. The end.
Yeah.
That's not what the book's about, like you said. That's not what I'm focusing on here.
Yes, exactly. And to quote a famous Orbot, Ben ain't on trial here.
I know that, Mr. Man.
He's not on trial. So, The
one thing I wanted to say about it, and it kind of tacks on to what you're talking about with people, there being some dissatisfaction and maybe a difference in what people were expecting. something that Joe and I talked about, and I got a letter through my blog from a gal who kind of brought this up too. And I actually talked to Joe about this one the very first time I read the book. One thing that stood out to me was that the way that the book is written, aside from being in that documentary style that uses the quotes rather than, a novel style that's more of a narrative, that's a difference. But something else that I felt like really stood out was that the book is definitely written from a masculine perception and as opposed to a feminine approach. Because, and I feel that way because there are so many things that women would want to know, and I'm not talking about the dirt now, but that women would want to know that men just don't care about. For example, one of the big mysteries in the Fanorama, at least among us women, is the bracelet. There's actually 2 bracelets, but the bracelet, where did they come from? He wore them from the earliest pictures to his final interview. Why do they mean so much? Where did they come from? Things like that. How did he choose to put the skunk stripe in his hair? Things like that.
The Christmas bread. What was the frickin' deal with the Christmas bread?
Well, there's some truth that we want to know. What kind of food did he like to eat? Was he a night owl?
Yeah.
Was he,
No, we do know what kind of food he ate. He liked hot stuff.
Oh, yes, that's true. We got the gasoline and the fire sauce and all of that followed him around all the time. But it's those kind of things that as women we think about, because we think about relating to Benjamin and wanting to be able to relate to who he was as a person. So we think about a lot of those things as opposed to Ben, the musician. We want to relate to him as an artist and those kind of things as well. But definitely the book is approached more as who was Ben in his character and in his artistry, and not so much about who he was on a day-to-day basis living. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So when you're saying that, what did people expect? Well, I think some women might have just expected to be able to relate more to Ben on a daily level.
Yeah. I see your point. And I never thought about it that way before you brought that up.
Yeah.
But yeah. Well, so last time we played the first part of Joe's interview, and we had it at the end of the podcast. So if by chance you didn't make it through our full podcast, listen to it again and go to the end, because we got a great interview with Joe that Donna did. This episode, we're going to put it in the front so that Donna and I can discuss the things said in the interview. So we're going to go ahead and play part 2 of that, and when we come back from that, then Donna and I will kind of discuss what was said in the interview.
Perfect.
All right, let's cue that up, Donna.
Here we go. Another area where I feel like you're careful in the book, and you let the people tell the story the way that they wanted to. But something that everybody always wonders about is the band breaking up. And obviously it's a topic of discussion. Everybody has their speculations and stuff, but I think that you kind of laid out basically that, in delicate terms, that, it was kind of a combination maybe of Ben wanting to do more, or he and Diane wanting to do more with lyrics, and then also just the financial, how it was uneven financially.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's no secret that if you are the main lyricist and you write all the songs, that means you have the publishing rights, which means you make more money.
Right.
I don't know exactly how much more money he made, but twice as much as the other guys. I don't know how much, but if you're publishing these songs, you're making more money than the drummer who's just sitting there drumming.
Right.
That's just the way it is. So towards the end, I don't necessarily think it was that they wanted to do more than what they were doing. I think part of it was they were concerned that they were doing less. I mean, as the car, it seemed like Rick was doing more and more, and the other guys were doing less and less.
Right.
So I think there might have been a concern of them kind of fading into the background more, as opposed to wanting to push and do more.
Right.
But you mentioned the lyric thing with Diane. I didn't necessarily talk too much about this in the book, but Ben was good at writing music.
Yes.
He could write melodies for songs, but lyrics wasn't necessarily his thing.
Right.
He was actually, when he got his solo deal, he was so excited about it, and then he turned around and went, "Oh my God, who's going to write the lyrics?" There's nobody, Rick's not here to do it. I got to write lyrics. And that's that's how Diane kind of came in and helped him in that regard. So he was a little self-conscious, if you will, about writing lyrics, and she sort of helped him with that. And I think maybe he grew in that regard, maybe gained a little more confidence in that regard. And after the album came out, he did sort of have the idea of, okay, I can do this, and I have Diane to support me, and we write lyrics together. So it was sort of approached, or he did mention the possibility of Diane and him contributing lyrics in some way, contributing a song to the next album, and that kind of thing. And as you can imagine, that didn't go over too well with Mr. Rick.
Well, and here's the thing. Okay, so you're confirming, or you're saying that he and Diane wrote lyrics.
Yes. Diane didn't.
Just her.
It wasn't just her. Now, don't get me wrong. It was mostly her job, if you will, to do that part. But it wasn't like she was writing a complete song, lyric-wise, and just handing it to Ben and saying, "Here, write the music for this."
Right.
Or Ben didn't write the melody or music to a song and hand her the music sheet and say, "Okay, here, put lyrics to this." No, they worked on them together. I would say that Diane probably had more influence and her fingerprints were more on the lyrics than Ben, but he contributed to the lyrics part for sure.
Okay. And so do you think that he really, when it got to the point where he approached Rick about he and Diane contributing something to the Cars album, so I kind of have two thoughts about that. One was, do you think it was because they had gotten a contract then for 30 songs over 3 years or something? Is that right? I can't remember. I'm sorry. I can't remember what it says in the book. But they had.
Yeah, I can't. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Well, I was just going to say, regardless of the specifics, they had a contract to write more songs. And so was the request to contribute more to the Cars driven by wanting to fulfill that contract or being part of fulfilling that contract? Or, I mean, I guess I just can't imagine, and I know I never met Ben. I know I don't know. But I just can't imagine that Ben was like, I've got words in me that I've got to get out. I mean, music, yes, but I just have never seen him as a man with a passion for lyrics or words. So,
yeah, it was never his passion for sure.
So so what do you think drove the request, or was it financial? Of we want to write songs too, so we can get that songwriting credit and that part of the paycheck.
I think it was him. I think it might have been him just gaining confidence in it in general, and maybe just wanting to grow as a musician. Maybe, once the solo album was done and, a couple of the songs on that album did pretty well, and maybe he just said, I can do this, and, I have Diane to help me with it, and maybe I shouldn't be so afraid or reserved about writing lyrics. Maybe I can do this if I keep working at it, kind of a thing.
Right.
So I think that's part of it. I think he just sort of gained a little more confidence from that solo album. And why wouldn't you? You put out a solo album. Rick didn't write any of those lyrics. Ben might not have written them all, but he was a part of it. And then, lo and behold, him and Diane get offered a contract to write songs. Well, somebody must think I can do this. Why would they offer me a contract to contribute songs to other artists if they don't think I can do it?
Right.
So I think it was more not necessarily him having the drive to want to do that per se, but I think as things were going along, he just sort of gained more confidence and said, "Hey, why can't I do this? Why can't I grow as a musician and try to become more well-rounded in that regard.
Yeah. Yeah. You've heard Diane be compared to Yoko Ono, right? That they say that she's the Yoko Ono of the Cars.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, of course, there's that kind of speculation out there, too, that this was really her ambition. She pushed Ben into approaching Rick, and that by doing that, she drove a wedge in what was obviously already a fairly cracked up relationship, but that she kind of delivered the death blow in that way. What do you think of that theory?
I think that's a little extreme. I don't think that she had the type of influence in the Cars breakup that Yoko Ono had in the Beatles breakup. I don't think it was that extreme. Did it play a part? Sure, it played a part, but a lot of things played a part. But I don't think it was, the Cars were breaking up because Diane was, behind Ben, pushing him forward, going, you're going to tell him this. You're going to ask him this. You're going to tell him we're going to do this. I really don't think that was the case. Now, do I know for sure? No. I did some extensive interviews with Diane. We didn't really get into a lot of details about that part of it because, as you can probably tell, I tried to make this book have a positive feel to it as much as I could.
Right.
And I know that I had to talk about the breakup. I know it's not a fairy tale. There is some realities to it. The band broke up. You don't break up because nothing bad's going on. You break up because there's problems.
Right.
So there were issues there, of course. But and did that play a part? I'm sure it did. When Ben's going to Rick and saying, I think Diane and I can do this, he said no. So that's going to create resentment. I mean, that's just the way it is. Right. But to say that she was the Yoko Ono of the Cars, I don't believe that. I really don't. I don't believe that.
So the band breaks up, and there was one interview where Ben said that then he spent the next few years basically in the woods, before he made his return to the stage. That he spent a lot of years hunting and fishing, and I kind of read that interview between the lines of he needed to get away and do some recuperating.
Yeah. And I don't really have a lot of detail about that particular part of his life because he was already a private guy to begin with, and that's exactly what he did. He actually got away from music for a couple of years. Mm-hmm. He obviously made a pretty good living for a decade with the Cars. I'm sure he set himself up pretty well where he didn't have to worry about going out and getting a regular job and doing that kind of thing. And you're right, that's when he sold his house and moved away from Boston. You know what, though? I do want to add that he did start to get back into music a little bit just before he moved to Vermont, because I tell the story in the book how, the Cars break up, he pulls away from music, doesn't do anything in music for a couple of years, but then he finally got the bug and wanted to start creating some music again. Mm-hmm. And that's when he got connected with David Frangione, who was his engineer / producer when he started creating the songs that were supposed to be the River of Fire album.
Right.
And so just before he moved to Vermont, he was starting to get back into music again and starting to get that itch. Then, of course, he just kind of left town and went to Vermont, and being the mystery man that he was, didn't even really let David know what he was doing. He just kind of left.
That's what I was just going to say, that the David Frangione story is just a heartbreaker to me because, you get the sense in David's words that he has no idea what happened. Like, the relationship just ended, and he's thought they were getting, they thought they had a good friendship and stuff. So he's just kind of like, wow, okay, Ben just took off, and David doesn't know if he did something or,
it was kind of like that. I mean,
yeah, that was a little bit of a heartbreaker for me.
Yeah, he didn't even really, the reason he didn't say too much to me about that is because he didn't know too much about it.
Right.
I mean, I have a feeling if he knew more about the reasons behind why Ben just decided to pick up and leave, he would have told me.
Yeah. It just hurts my heart for him.
Yeah, and he talks a little bit about how because we've mentioned these interviews a little bit. As much as we love Ben and how amazing of an individual he was, just like every single one of us in life, nobody is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has faults. Everybody has some kind of demon in them that they have to fight.
Mm-hmm.
And Ben was a moody guy. He was. I'm not saying that to put him down.
No.
That's just his personality.
It's a reality, yeah.
So David did talk about how even though they were friends and they worked well together, he said that he could tell that Ben had his good days and Ben had his bad days. He told me a couple things off the record where, and not get into too many details because it is supposed to be off the record and it's not in the book, that there were days that they were scheduled to work together and Ben wouldn't show. And he'd call up Ben and, are you coming in today or what do we got going on? And Ben would just say, I'm not coming in today. And that would be it. And he might not see him for a few days, might not see him for a week. And all of a sudden he'd come back and be ready to go. So I think Ben had his struggles. And that
goes along with what Judith said, too, about that he would get in these moods and not talk to her for days.
Yeah, she told me sometimes it would be over something that she could recognize. Okay, they have an argument about something and he doesn't talk to her for a few days. Bingo. You understand, you don't like it, but you understand why it happened because you just had an argument about something. She told me that there were days or times where he would go silent and she absolutely had no idea why. We didn't have an argument. We weren't fighting about something. Why is he acting like this?
He's so hard to deal with.
Yeah. And, I don't want to make it sound like, they had this relationship that was that difficult all the time. Because in the same book, she tells me things about, the romantic side of Ben, soft-hearted side of Ben. She talks about how it broke her heart that, Ben's son never got to really grow up with his dad because she knew that Ben would have been he was for the 5 years or so that he was around his son, but she's like, he was a great teacher and he was very patient. And she said that he would have just been an unbelievable father. She knows in her heart. So there's all these wonderful things, too, that she thinks about Ben. So I don't want people to, for a second, to think that, she thought that Ben was some kind of bad person or something, but he he was just a moody guy. And
had his struggles like everybody else.
Absolutely.
So through those years, through the 90s, there's rumors about, and you mentioned a little bit in the book, about opportunities for them to get back together that then never panned out. I mean, I'm so curious, what do you think was Ben ever interested in reuniting with the band during the 90s? Was he, or was the break just too clean? You know what I mean? Was it just too, I'm done with the Cars?
I don't think it was that extreme. I think because when the Cars broke up, Ben was very distraught over it, like anybody would be. You're with a bunch of guys for all that time, and you do all these wonderful things together, and then all of a sudden it's not there anymore.
Well, and he does, moody, just hooking on to what we were just talking about, moody people do tend to be very sensitive. I mean, I imagine that he was more sensitive maybe than some guys, and so it would make sense that it would hurt him deeply. Oh,
no doubt. Diane sort of says that it kind of changed him a little bit. It kind of changed his demeanor, maybe changed his outlook on things a little bit. Maybe wasn't quite as when he was having his good days, and he wasn't, maybe he wasn't so much of a happy-go-lucky guy as he once was.
Right.
She said it really did affect him. And without trying to get too far into this part of it either, I say in the book it's not a secret that Ben liked to have a drink. And I think that sort of started to increase too.
Yeah, I think she mentions that too. Yeah, she touches on that.
Yeah, when he doesn't have his band anymore.
Well,
That must be quite the adjustment to make, you know?
Especially when your entire life has been focused on being a successful musician, performer, artist, whatever, right?
Yeah. And
it's always his goal. Right, yeah. It was always his goal. He reaches the pinnacle, and then to have it sort of drop out from under your feet.
Right. Well, I kind of talk about how it wasn't so much maybe that he wanted to participate and do more in the band, but the other guys in the band were sort of maybe feeling like they were getting pushed in the background a little bit more. Because, you know, I mean, think about it. By the time they did Door to Door, they didn't even have a producer anymore. Rick was even doing that.
Right.
So Rick was really doing everything. I mean, you know, obviously the other guys were still, you know, playing their instruments, but I mean, Rick wrote all the songs. He was now the producer. There's a kind of a story where when they went into the studio to start recording Door to Door, in the past, all the other guys, even though they weren't contributing lyrically, they would all go into the studio together and work on songs, and everybody had their own ideas and were able to contribute things in that way. The story goes, when Rick came into the studio for Door to Door, he pretty much had complete songs on a cassette. Said, here, guys, learn these. This is what we're doing. So he really was, I don't want to call him a dictator, but he was dictating a much more of what was going on at the end.
Okay.
So if you combine that with Ben approaching him and saying, I'd like to maybe see if I can contribute some lyrics, and you're getting shut down there, then on top of that, we also mentioned that if you're the main songwriter, you're making more money. Okay?
Right.
So how do the other guys make their money? They make their money by going on tour.
Right.
That's how the other guys make their money.
And guess who doesn't like to tour?
and especially at the end there with Door to Door, Rick was actually talking about not touring anymore. So here's the other guys in the band going, okay, this is our bread and butter going on the road, and now we might not even go on the road.
Yeah.
So it was a bunch of things combined, I think. And I don't want to make it sound like I know it all. I mean, I don't. I didn't interview everybody in the band. And the guys I did interview in the band, they didn't necessarily get into details with me about the breakup. And I didn't necessarily want to go there because, like I said, I wanted this book to be in a positive light as much as I could.
Right.
Do I have to talk about the breakup? Yes, I do. Do I have to talk about Ben getting divorced a couple times? Yes, I do. Do I have to mention that Ben liked to have a drink? Yes, I do. But I didn't want to get into extreme details about that stuff.
You've got my brain pinging in all sorts of directions. So I have another question, but we were originally talking about reunions. Do you think that Ben would have been open to a reunion in the 90s?
I think he would have been open to a reunion in the 90s, but not in the same way that things were going at that time. If they were going to get back together and it was going to be just like the things I just talked about, if it was going to be
Rick calling all the shots, Rick writing all the lyrics,
Rick doing the producing, Rick telling the guys, here's what songs we're going to do, all those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
I think Ben would have been ready to come back, but under different terms.
Right. I feel like Ben, I guess in the beginning of the interview, we talked about Ben having a very independent spirit. But at the same time, when I start thinking about this stuff toward the end of his life and later in his career and that kind of thing, he didn't, he had a solo band and all of that, but he was never just solo. You know what I mean? Like Rick was solo.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it seemed like Ben always needed a partner, always wanted someone to partner with him. He had to have a support system around him, not to do what he was so talented at doing, but to put himself forward.
Right.
You know?
They did play different roles in their musical lives. I mean, it makes sense to me that Rick wanted to be a solo artist and be on his own and do his solo albums and be in control, because that's what he always did anyway.
Mm-hmm.
He was always the leader of the Cars, and that was his personality. That wasn't Ben's personality. I mean, even when Ben was the lead singer of the Grasshoppers when he was 17 years old, He wasn't a solo artist. He was in a band.
Right, right.
So I think that is Ben's personality in a music sense, was he didn't want to be a beacon standing out alone. He didn't want to be a leader of a band or a solo artist. He wanted to play music, and he wanted to sing and have his band buddies around him, and it was like a family thing to him. So I do think they had different goals in that regard.
And even when he did the solo album with Diane, he had Diane. I mean, he had a support system in place. If he was going to do, another solo album, I mean, he might just have his name on it, but I don't think he would do it he just wouldn't be able to do it just solo.
Yeah, I mean, I think if he actually got to the point where he would have, I mean, after the River of Fire stuff, if he had actually went to try it again, if you will, to see if he could get some music out there on an album or whatever, I don't think he would have tried to do it as a solo artist. I think he would have tried to be a part of a band. He would have been, I want to get some buddies together, and like I've always done in my life, and have a band. And
you really see that too when he joined Big People, and even Voices of Classic Rock, but really Big People, where he found, after that kind of that long road of disappearing into the woods and trying to kind of scratch up some songs and different things through the Orr band and that kind of stuff, he just really seemed to be happy in Big People. He really seemed to settle in and find his place again, maybe find another family.
I tell you, you've mentioned a couple times in this interview, Donna, where I'll talk about something, like when I was talking about David Frangione, you kind of said, "Oh, that makes my heart sad." Mm-hmm. That's where I get sad. The whole Big People thing, because they were on the brink. I'm not going to say that they were going to be another Cars, but they were on the brink of something happening. Because I interviewed the manager of the band, the tour manager. I interviewed the significant people in the Big People family, and it was going to happen. They when they started out, they said, let's just go on the road and do some of our own songs that they've done with other bands. And after that tour, their tour manager told me, and their promotions guy told me, that there were promoters coming to them all of a sudden. They weren't going to promoters saying, here's who we are, do you want to book us some shows? So they were really starting to build momentum, and they were actually already talking about writing original material together. And if we never lost Ben, I feel in my heart that Big People would have gotten a record deal, and Ben would have been out in the spotlight again, and that band was going to go somewhere. But it breaks my heart because they were on the brink of something big happening with that band. And they also, without getting into too many details, they kind of drugged Ben out of Vermont. Again, I don't want to get into details about it, but let's just say that he didn't necessarily have, people around him that were necessarily looking out for his best interests, I guess. And I think the Big People guys kind of sensed that. They told me, and I kind of say it in the book a little bit, the first time they met him, they were not shocked, but it wasn't the fashion plate rock star looking Ben that they all knew from the Cars.
Right.
He had a scowl on his face, and he didn't necessarily look happy. And
wasn't he all black leather and?
Yeah, wearing his Harley Davidson outfit, and not that there's anything wrong with that, but they could tell that he had lost his soft edge.
Yeah, he had kind of a dark persona, didn't he?
Yeah, I think Pat Travers called him a flask-toting tough guy from Vermont. That's how he described him. So there was Ben had definitely changed, and they pulled him out of that situation, and they brought him down to Atlanta. And there's a picture in the book of Ben and Julie walking together, and they're holding hands.
I love that picture.
Yeah, and you look at Ben there, and he looks like Ben again.
Yeah.
Maybe not exactly like the old Ben, but you could tell he lost weight. He had a big smile on his face. the old Ben was coming back. He was coming back.
Well, compare the picture of him walking with Julie to, I think in the chapter to a few pages before that, the picture of him with Voices of Classic Rock, when he's, he kind of has his back turned to the group and his arms are crossed and he's got this scowl on his face. I know each picture is just sort of a snapshot in time, but, you have definitely a different vibe from Voices of Classic Rock picture just a year or so before to more of the relaxed, happy Ben that you see in the Big People pictures.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. It's good that you mentioned that classic Voices of Classic Rock photo because, he's not even really standing with those group of guys.
Right, he's
they're
kind
all
of separated himself a little bit.
Yeah, they're all kind of huddled close, and they all got big smiles on their faces. As Ben is kind of off to the left, a couple of feet away from him, and like you said, he's got his back turned, and he's got his arms folded, and he's got a frown on his face, and.
What it reminds me of is that in the door-to-door photo shoots, not the one where they're like standing, of course, by a door, and he's wearing black leather, and all the guys are wearing their jackets and whatever. But in those shots, all five of them are kind of lined up, but there's a distinct amount of space between Ben and the other guys, and he's got his arms crossed like that again, and he's got that scowl. I mean, you can just see the discontent, the attitude.
Yeah, no doubt. His attitude and his personality had changed over the years. And, he went through a lot when losing his band and losing his relationship ending. And he was going through some significant changes, no doubt.
Yeah.
Going back to what I said before, that's the part where my heart kind of gets broken a little bit because I really feel like the old Ben was coming back. And those guys in Big People really loved him. And I think that they were going to do some big things together.
Yeah.
And you know what? Ben was the key to it because what happened after Ben was gone? So was Big People.
Yeah, they were done.
They were done. And they actually even tried to kind of continue. They brought in a couple of guys and tried to see if they could make it work. But Liberty DeVito even said to me, he said, when Ben was gone, the rock star of our band was gone. And that's saying something when you're talking about a band of rock stars.
Yeah.
When you have, Liberty DeVito, come on. The guy, Billy Joel's drummer for 20 years or whatever it was. And all these guys had tasted fame and fortune, and they know what it's like to be a rock star. And they're saying they lost their rock star?
Right.
That tells you right there. How important he was to that group. And, again, it breaks my heart that that happened in the end because I really think that Ben had a second phase that was coming, and I really feel like it was going to be significant. And it's too bad we never got to really hear or see what would have happened with Big People.
Yeah, that's for sure. One of the questions I could, Joe, I could talk to you forever. And then plus I could talk to you even for another forever about this book and about Ben. And, but I know we've got to wrap this up here pretty soon, but I did want to ask you one more thing. Rick and Elliot are not interviewed for the book, but they were also not in attendance at Ben's memorial service.
Yeah.
Is there a relation there? Is that just a coincidence, or do you think, is that indicative of deeper? I know Rick and Ben in particular, I feel like, and you kind of indicated in the book at the final interview, everybody kind of made amends and stuff. But that's pretty significant. He died very quickly after that final interview. I'm curious about them not being willing. I shouldn't say willing. I don't know what they were willing or not willing to do. They, in fact, though, did not attend the memorial service, and then they also declined to participate in the book. What are your thoughts on that?
I have to admit it's, and I think this will make sense to you, it's hard for me to really say too much about why Rick wasn't at his memorial service and why Elliot wasn't at his memorial service, because I didn't get to interview them, and I didn't get to, maybe I wouldn't have asked that specifically,
right?
But I think I could have asked enough questions revolving around those themes where I could have maybe formulated a better opinion of why I think. Because, I mean, obviously you can't read somebody's mind, and I'll never know for sure. So, I mean, I'm not trying to hide anything here. It's the truth. Because I didn't get to interview these guys, it's really hard to have that much insight about it. I was told by a couple of different people that Elliot did have a reason to not be there. Not as in I don't want to be there, but he had some sort of
conflict
scheduling
or something.
Yeah, scheduling conflict, some kind of commitment. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. I didn't talk to the man. But I heard from a couple of different sources that it wasn't that Elliot didn't want to be there. Now, that said, it's still hard for me to swallow, to be honest with you, just my opinion, because if I was in a band, I tell you what, it better be something like me going to my own parents' funeral or a close relative's funeral, something that significant for me not to find a way to be there.
Right.
So I'm not saying that didn't happen. I'm sure he had his reason, but it better be a damn good one as far as I'm concerned. I mean, that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
But all I can tell you is, as far as Elliot goes, is that he wanted to be there and couldn't. Rick's a whole other ball game. As everybody out there knows, Rick is a different kind of cat. He is, I mean, we talk about how reserved and quiet Ben was. I mean, you can put Rick right next to him in that regard.
Right.
He's a mystery man too. And I, so much so that I could at least offer to you what I think might have happened about Elliot, and I had some people tell me that this is why he wasn't there. Nobody could tell me anything about why Rick wasn't there. So I can't venture to say, you know?
Right, right.
But I do have, wow, this is going to be a first. I'm actually going to let you people know a little bit about, I don't want to talk about Elliot and why, what happened when I approached him about the book, because I did approach him about the book and he didn't want to participate, and I need to leave it at that.
Okay.
But I can tell you a little bit about Rick. I never talked to him face to face, as in me talking to him on the phone and telling him what I'm going to do. That never happened.
Mm-hmm.
However, we have a mutual friend. He's in the book. His name is Louis Aria. He's a Boston filmmaker. Right. Super, super nice guy. And I wrote an article for my standing room only website, well, after I interviewed Louis for the book, and I published that article on my website, and he loved it. We ended up posting that article on his Facebook page. And lo and behold, who sees that article but Paulina, who obviously is also friends with Louis, because Rick is friends with Louis.
Right.
So Paulina calls up Louis and says, Louis, I just saw this article about you on your page. That is so cool. Congratulations on that. And I'm paraphrasing, of course. And Louis says back to her, yeah, that's a great article. Thanks for letting me know that you read it and stuff. Oh, by the way, Joe Milliken wrote that article, and that's the guy who's writing the book about Ben. And she says, oh, that's interesting. Well, that's cool. So that was the end of that conversation. And the story goes that Paulina then in turn showed the article that I wrote about Louis to Rick. And Rick read it and thought it was really cool too. So Rick calls Louis up and says, Louis, how you doing? I saw this article written about you. It was really cool. Great article. And Louis says the same thing to Rick. He says, well, Rick, I'm glad you liked it. Good to hear from you. Oh, by the way, Joe Milliken wrote that article. He's the guy who's writing the book about Ben. And Rick said, oh, that's really nice. So in a roundabout way, and of course I'm all paraphrasing, and this is what Louis told me. Then in a roundabout way, he kind of said, Joe kind of talked to me about, wanting to have you participate in the book for obvious reasons. But, I think he approached your PR people, and I don't know if, you know how that goes. I don't know if the message ever got to you or anything. So what do you think about that? Do you think you might want to participate in this book? And basically what Rick said was he had no problem with me writing the book. He said that Ben deserves recognition for the amazing musician that he was. He said he was happy that I was doing this for Ben, but he gracefully declined. He just didn't want to do it. So Lewis came back to me and told me the story. And, of course, I was disappointed. I mean, I felt good in the fact that he wasn't like, oh, what's this jerk doing writing this book? What the heck's going to be in there? But I asked Lewis. I'm like, okay, so he didn't really tell you why, though? I mean, you know him, Lewis. Can you tell me why? Why wouldn't he do this? And he said, Joe, even though I'm friends with him, he doesn't say too much more to me than he does anybody else. He said, but I don't want you to take it personal because Rick never talks about Ben to anybody. Now, this is a few years back. I know in the last couple of years he's talked a little bit more about it.
Right.
Them getting inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and the 40th anniversary of the debut album and all these happy things going on.
Right.
So basically he told me that Rick gave his blessing on the book, but I shouldn't take it personally because he doesn't talk to anybody about Ben, and he doesn't talk to anybody about the breakup or what their conflicts were. He keeps it private. So as disappointed as I was that Rick wouldn't participate in the book, I do feel good, at least in the fact that I know for a fact that he knew what I was doing. I know for a fact that I gave him the opportunity to do it if he wanted to. And I know for a fact that he gave his blessing and didn't think I was doing anything bad or anything like that.
Yeah.
So it's not much of a consolation, but that's the kind of the story behind trying to get Rick involved in the book. So I worked long and hard on this thing, and I want everybody to know that I exhausted all possibilities to try to get them in the book. And I would have done just about anything to make that happen. So throw Roy Thomas Baker in there too. Those are the three guys that I could not get in the book that I wanted in that book so bad I could taste it. And I tried. With that being said, I cannot thank David Robinson enough, and I cannot thank Greg Hawkes enough for being willing to talk about their friend and being involved in this book, because if I didn't get any of the guys in the band in the book, I would have had serious problems with doing it at all.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. You look at the roster of people that were involved in the book in the back, and then, like you said too, you could have interviewed forever.
Oh my God.
The ripple effect of people that Ben knew, was amazing. So you put a lot of legwork into it, a lot of hours and energy and relationship building, and we appreciate it so much. So much. It's an amazing book. I love it.
A little funny thing I want to add is when you talk about the significant women that I got to talk to for the book, it's kind of funny. Let's just say I had a lot of female fans get a hold of me and say, I got my Ben story. I knew who Ben was. And, I was nice to all of them. I would let them tell me their stories, and they were all great stories. They, never anybody talking bad about Ben.
They may have misunderstood what the scope of the book was going to include. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Well, and we've discussed this a little bit before, and I've written in my own reviews of the book that I think that you did Ben right. And it's obvious through the entire thing from front to back that your intention is to lift Ben up and to shine a light on his talent and his wonderful personality and the aspects of him that made him such a great man and such an inspiring artist. And I think you did that. I think you did it perfectly. You were still real. You did not paint him as a saint or an angel. You were real about it, but you did it with respect and dignity. And I'm fairly confident that I speak for many, many, many fans who have this book in their hands now that we really appreciate it. So we really appreciate what you did.
Well, Donna, it goes without saying how much that means to me. I want to thank you, too, for everything you've done to help me. And I've said this before, that I probably wouldn't be in this position without you. I know it means a lot to you, too, this book. And I hope the fans love it. Thanks to you and Dave, too. I really appreciate you guys having me on. I also want to say that I know you guys set up a little different format for this episode. I know that usually you and Dave together talk to your guests. I want to thank Dave right now for creating this podcast, and I want to thank him for bringing you on board as a partner, because you guys are a great team. I really appreciate your efforts, too.
Well, my pleasure, as you know. And so now you get to go take a nap, and I get to go drive kids to drama practice. So.
Okay, well, again, thanks to all the fans, and thanks to you, and thanks to Dave for having me on, and I had a great time.
Yeah, me too. Thanks, Joe.
Okay, thanks. I'll talk to you soon.
I'm sure you'll talk to me very soon.
whether you want me to or not, you're stuck.
Okay, so the first thing that sticks out on me, when you bring up the question about the band breaking up.
Yes.
And that's probably one of those areas that people wanted to know more of, but I think there's enough information out there to know why the band was breaking up. I mean, the members were concerned that things had changed. And when we talked about this last time about, Rick taking on more and more, and, as Joe said, that the rest of the band was kind of fading into the background.
Right.
On it. And, the fact that, Rick was getting into his solo mood and just kind of going from there.
And then the financial realities of it too, as far as Rick being the songwriter and the producer, and therefore getting a greater percentage of royalties.
Yeah, so I mean, people could say Rick was being a dick, and I don't blame people for thinking that. I mean,
well,
I just think he was evolving into what he has become. He wasn't into the band thing anymore. I mean, he wanted to make music. He wanted to make it on his own terms. He didn't want to tour.
Right.
It was time to make that split.
Yeah. And I think, it really stood out to me when Joe, he turned it around in my mind when he said it wasn't so much that Ben wanted to do more. It was that he was worried that he was doing less.
Yeah.
Because I always looked at it as, he wanted to write lyrics now. He was wanting to move, grow forward. But I really see what Joe's saying when he was referring to, that they used to Rick used to bring in the songs and they'd all fiddle around with them and do all this stuff, and it wasn't like that anymore. Now it was, here's what we're doing, boom.
No, I remember in that Goldmine magazine interview, that Benjamin says something effective. Here's how it was different. We come in and things were already laid out.
Right.
That the things that we used to do were already done. And, they didn't have that. And I also remember from that interview, Benjamin saying, I think it pretty much was my fault that we broke up, which makes me feel bad because no, it wasn't his fault. It was just a band dynamic, change. But, when it comes to Ben, as Joe said, gaining confidence with his lyric writing and so forth. I think back to Milkwood. And, Benjamin has Linkin Park on there. So he had done stuff with Rick before. Right. In terms of writing songs and so forth. And you had Greg, who was getting writing credits. Right. So I don't think it's that much of a stretch, for him to say, hey, can I contribute some lyrics to this? Or, hey, I have a song. Right. That I think, can we work on it together? So, and that's where I just kind of come thinking, Rick didn't handle it well. I think Rick was being, as Joe said, a dictator, and kind of, going his own thing. But
right. I thought it was so good when Joe said that, everybody has demons. Everybody has things that they're fighting and Ben had his struggles.
Yeah.
He did.
We all have our demons.
Yeah, I thought that was so good.
No doubt about it.
So, yeah, it takes two to tango. So I'm sure Ben, obviously, from Judith's perspective, there was some tough stuff in those relationships. I've always thought, I can't imagine what it'd be like to be in a relationship with Benjamin or with a famous person like that. I mean, just all of the outside interference on your relationship would be very difficult to take.
I cannot imagine being with someone and going through days of the silent treatment.
I would die, Dave. I would die.
You know, there have been a few times in my marriage that my wife has gone silent on me, and I would rather her like stab me than to get the silent treatment.
Yeah.
You know, because there's nothing you can say. There's nothing you can do. You just got to give people their space. But man, it's the worst.
It's
just
harsh.
the worst.
It's so harsh. Yeah.
So harsh. But you know, when Joe's saying that Ben was a moody guy, yeah, you know, he was a moody guy. You know, everybody can be moody, but yeah, the whole thing about the stretches of time, that's just, you know, that to me just signals somebody who was not having a good time in life. But when like Joe hit upon the with big people and so forth.
Yes.
Ben was back, and that picture in the book, you know, Ben was back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's some pictures that, you know, you can see on the internet of, you know, Ben in like early 90s or whatever, and he's looking kind of rough.
Yeah.
You know, he took off to the woods and gone squatching. He may have lived with a family of squatches. I don't know.
There are pictures of him in his like camo hunting suit,
Yes.
you know, and stuff. I think he might have been mistaken for the Sasquatch himself a time or two out there in the woods with his big old blonde hair and camo suit.
I got me a real live squatch. That's not a squatch. That's Benjamin Orr.
Let me go, damn it.
Get off me. Who do you think you are? John Calicis? Get off me.
That was a good one.
The other thing I found really interesting about that interview is the kind of bonus information that Joe talks about Rick and Elliot not being at Benjamin's memorial, which, you know, I've always thought was weird, and that neither one of them had wanted to have anything to do with the book.
Right. Yeah. Declined to participate.
Yeah, declined to participate.
Yeah,
you
it
know.
was nice for Joe to shed some light on that.
Yeah.
Particularly I liked his story about Rick, you know, that Rick knows about the book and gave him his blessing. And so it's a bummer that, you know, Rick didn't want to contribute to it, but that's a good feeling to know that he wasn't against it, you know?
Yeah. I think maybe if Joe would have offered him meatloaf, I think he would have been in.
Yes, that was the key. Darn it.
How about it, Rick? I'll come over. I'll make a meatloaf.
We'll sit around and chat.
We'll sit around and chat. Get the interview in. There you go.
Perfect.
Yeah. And the other interesting thing is that Roy Thomas Baker declined to participate too, but we know how that goes, right, Donna? Joe was leaving messages after message, getting no response.
Roy's just retweeting stuff left and right.
He's just
and
retweeting
no response. Well, because he was out in the Arizona desert.
At Roy Thomas Baker. Hey, how would you like to be interviewed for this book? He just retweeted.
Click, retweet.
Click, there you go. There you go. Yeah. You know, and the thing about Joe mentions about people, you know, offering their stories to him, whatever. And you know, we had our Orbots episode. I'm sure everything that Joe has under that is much better than our Orbot episode.
Yes. Wouldn't that be interesting to get a peek behind those curtains? Whew.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I don't even need to buy a book, Joe. If you just send me the transcripts of all the stories from the Orbots, I'll buy it for $30. I'm telling you.
That's right.
It doesn't have to be hardbound or anything.
No questions
asked. I'll just
asked.
take it digitally.
That's right.
Those stories have a significant audience, and it's me. It's me. I'm the only audience for that. I guess you too, but
yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Well, that was a good interview. And as always, I mean, there's so much I want to pick Joe's brain about. You know, when you get on the topic of Ben, I could go on forever. and just my curiosity never ends. And so, but I'm thankful that we were able to chat for as long as we were, and that on the show. It was good. It was fun.
Excellent interview, and I appreciate you doing the interview and asking those things that other interviewers never think to ask, and Joe being open enough to answer and fill us in with some of those things that would otherwise never come up. Yeah.
I forgot I was going to ask him. So how did you come up with this idea to write this book? Dang it, I forgot to ask him that. Shoot.
Damn it, Donna.
Shoot, I know.
You had one job. I
blew it.
Blew it, Donna.
Now we'll never know.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
I don't even know if Joe would know how to answer that question. 75 times.
So ask the same 6 questions.
That's how it is.
Every interview.
Yeah. I know. And if I was Joe, I'd make up something different every time.
I know.
I mean, I'd use the story of, well, he came to me in a dream.
Oh, there you go. How about it came to my wife in a dream?
Well,
ooh, that was weird.
Well, believe it or not, my barber is a second cousin, twice removed, to Benjamin Orr's barber. And somehow we got on the topic.
It was the weirdest thing.
Serendipity. In our last episode, we stopped just getting up to the part with the cars.
Yes.
Chapter 8.
Now, can I just tell you really quick, too? When we were preparing for the first one, I was reading my galley, so I knew it was the uncorrected version, so I was trying to overlook all the...
The galley.
Yes.
Arr.
Had my one eye covered, and I was reading out of that book. And so, for this time, I was reading through my actual hard copy book, and I have found errors in the book. And it is making me insane. Insane.
No.
Yes, I have. Let me see. I flagged them, of course. I have
Donna.
4 little flags. I know. How many times did I read this?
Why are you outing yourself?
Oh, because I feel terrible. Because I know grammar Nazis are going to find stuff and go, this I see.
Oh, wait, I see it. Creating cars. Cars is spelled with a K. Wow. How could you miss that one, Donna?
Dave. One of them is glaring. I'm not going to say what it is, but.
No, don't.
There's a glaring one in there for sure. In other words, one's like there's a semicolon when there should be a colon and things like that.
Oh. You think the average person knows that one, Donna?
Well, anyway.
So.
So I'm going to start compiling a list for when we do for the publisher of, okay.
All right. I won't fault you for editing this part out though, Donna. Just saying.
Oh, well. Okay, I'll think about it. Well, I guess I just want people to know. I know that that's a mistake. I didn't read that and think that's perfectly fine. Although apparently I did on the first read through because it's still there. Anyway. All right.
So creating cars, chapter 8.
Yes.
First thing that just blew me away. Danny Lewis wrote the keyboard hook for just what I needed.
Yes.
How pissed do you think that guy is?
Well, and did you see that a couple of paragraphs down? It says that he was not very happy.
No.
Yeah. So does that remember last time we were saying, gee, we wonder if it's sour grapes and blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. Okay, you can have your grapes, Danny. Go for it.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
We'll give you those sour grapes.
We should, if I would have known that beforehand, I would have totally asked Greg. Greg, tell us about writing the keyboard hook for just what I needed.
You try to trap him?
Testing him, yeah. That's not what Danny Lewis says. Greg.
Well, we know we would have known. He would have fessed up because it was written before he was even in the cars.
Yeah. But that's just incredible because you just think that was something that Greg Hawkes came up with, but it was like boom, there it is.
Yeah.
It answers a lot of questions on things. All the times I've contacted Danny Lewis saying, "Hey, you got any old pictures or or anything you want to say about the Cars or blah, 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 da, da, da. Nope, no response.
Crickets.
Crickets.
RTV. Crickets. We come from the same school of response.
I've got a new strategy now. I can contact Danny and say, Danny, what's your thoughts on Greg Hawk's keyboard hook for just what I need? I'll get a response from him. That'd be nice.
You totally tweet him. Hey, Danny, what do you think of that?
Yeah,
This is a great hook. Oh, man.
Wow.
Poor Danny Lewis.
Yeah, but that's still pretty awesome. I mean, because just think about it. It wasn't maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, that we just thought Danny Lewis was a bad picture of Greg. We had no clue.
Right? Who is that guy?
All these years, and all of a sudden, boom. Hey, that's not Greg.
Oh, my gosh. I remember how we freaked out.
Yeah, it's
That
pretty
was
awesome.
crazy. So that's a good little nugget there.
And, with them being a new band, I'm sure people didn't notice that there was all of a sudden a different keyboard player. It wasn't like Bewitched when they changed Darren's. And I remember that, man. I was like, what the hell? What happened to the old Darren?
Well, one thing I thought was really neat about this chapter 2 is just how when they did make the changes and then they came together as the Cars, just the sense of confidence that they all had, that it was the perfect synergy, that those 5 guys, they were it. When he says that they made a pact, like that's a very literal thing. They literally said and agreed together, we are going to have a record deal within a year. I mean, they knew they were good. They knew it was the right mix, And they were all seasoned musicians by this point. They were all older. I mean, Elliot was young in his early 20s, but they'd all been around the block. They weren't, just out of high school with stars in their eyes. They knew the business. They knew the routine. They knew what they needed. And they came together so perfectly. It's amazing to me. It just gives me like the shivers of just like, oh my gosh, here they are,
This part here on page 80, which says, the night of their debut at the Rat, I was waiting outside the club when I saw Rick Ocasek walking up to the place with a blonde on each arm. Now, who knew that Rick had trouble walking at such a young age? Guy's knees were going out already. He was like early 30s, right?
Yes. He was.
Poor women had to help him.
I know, his nurses.
Yeah, his nurses.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And then I thought on page 82, I think it is, that quote from Melanie Ransom about being Party Boy Ben.
Party Boy Ben.
It's really cool. I mean, like, it's just interesting how you see different sides of his personality from different people, or, different people saw him and knew him differently. And there'll be more, I mean, as we go through the book, different changing attitudes and things that he displayed. But to have him be the outgoing one with the great sense of humor seems at odds with his public persona of, I don't talk in interviews and I'm shy and a little awkward in front of the microphone if I have to talk. It's a different side of him.
Yeah, well, I think every member of the Cars is a funny guy.
Mm-hmm.
They've all got their different wit about them.
I agree.
But you wouldn't think of Benjamin Orr as a funny guy.
Right. Well, apparently he's Party Boy Ben. That can be your new doll edition that comes out. I mean, you just had the regular Benjamin doll, then you've got, undercover rock star, and now you can have Party Boy Ben.
Party Boy Ben. Red Solo cup sold separately.
There you go. I know. I was trying to think of a prop. And then you get to chapter 9. I don't know about you, but I love the George Daly story. Signing the contract on the napkin.
Yes.
Oh, I loved having that whole process illustrated. That's so great.
And I can't remember if I mentioned this to you or just to Dave Jeskow, But it blew my mind that in the movie Turbocharged, they have that kind of a scene, you know, where you know, with the different bands and so forth. And I asked him, I said, how would you even know this? And he said, research. Now, I don't know what kind of research he did for Turbocharge, but I found that amazing.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Well, so maybe he knows George Daly. I mean, you know, these New York dudes.
Yeah, he might. And Clive Davis. Got the jump on Clive.
That's right. In your face, Davis.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really cool. And I loved Dante Rossi's quote toward the end on page 94 where he said that they were invited to a Christmas party at Benny's mother's house and everyone was just so proud. Benny was thrilled. He just sparkled. Love that. Love it. So good. Again, to me, I just feel the excitement in these chapters of the Cars just on the edge of bursting onto the scene. It's so thrilling to me.
They thought watching the movie Blade Runner realized Ben resembled a better looking Rutger Hauer, which people have always thought.
Yes.
I got news for you. That was Benjamin Orr. There is no Rutger Hauer. Oh, okay. So this quote in here, I don't know what page it's from because I have it on my digital, but I love segues. Roy Thomas Baker told the Daily Events Book website in 2006, I like records to be continuous.
Yes, that answers. We were speculating on that several episodes ago, I think.
Yeah. In the beginning, they played the first 3 or 4 songs off the Cars' first album because the disc jockeys kept missing the end of the songs. It worked out so well.
Perfect.
But that's, you know, I'm telling you, that's just one of the things that I've always liked about the Cars was how songs would flow into each other like that. Very cool. And, you know, I'm sure I brought it up before, but, you know, when you're listening to, you know, an artist on shuffle or whatever, it seems weird when they're broken up, you know, like you've got Shooby Doo come in and then all of a sudden You Are the Girl starts up after. It's like, oh, what, man? Come on, shuffle. Get with it. Man, just think how big that must have been for them that, you know, here's Roy Thomas Baker.
Yeah.
Who did Queen.
Yeah.
You know, and he's wanting to produce their first album. So, and as we get, you know, more into the Cars stuff, you know, this is the part of the book that I think I enjoyed the most besides the post Cars stuff, which I was really looking forward to. But, you know, some of this stuff is just, you know, were things that you knew already, but it's kind of a behind the scenes look of a lot of different things. And this picture of Diane Akins.
Yes.
In there during the Candy O time. Such a cool story.
Yes. She is just the sweetest woman. She is so great. I hope that you get to meet her in Cleveland, because I know she'll be at the book signing event, and her and her husband Neil are just great people. Dave, you're gonna love them.
As I remember, isn't her husband on one of the pages?
Oh yeah, he's within the last year he's shown up in the groups and stuff and is kind of making his presence known. So yeah, he's here and there now, which is really nice.
Yeah, but Diane is not on social media.
Correct.
Which is probably a wise move. Because you know what she would get. So.
Yes. And I even feel protective of Neil in that way. You know, I just feel like shielding him a little bit, or, you know, just wanting to be like, you know, be careful. There's some more bots out there.
Back off.
When I was in Cleveland for the Rock Hall, we went over to Diane's house for a while, and she showed us, she has and I know this isn't a secret because she's talked about it in an interview before. She has a room that just has all of this memorabilia and stuff. And she was given a lot of things of Ben's after his mom passed away. And so she has a ton of stuff. But anyway, she has a lot of those postcards and stuff on an album. And so we got to read some of the postcards and things that he sent from different places in the world. It was so great.
You know, you can just see some crazy ass person, you know, getting in there, her saying, "Here, look at these pictures," and the person just running.
Just scooping up armfuls of stuff. Run out of here. Yeah. Jeez.
Well, I am up to chapter 12 in Panorama.
Now, I wanted to ask you about something. In this chapter, at the beginning, he talks about they switched from Fred Lewis to Elliot Roberts, who can you picture as anybody else but H. John Benjamin. That's all I see is him going, that's a nice suit. Where'd you get that suit? But what I wanted to bring up was I thought it was interesting when he kind of alluded to the idea that, Elliot Roberts was used to managing solo artists as opposed to bands, and that there was a little bit of concern about Rick being moved to the forefront. I mean, there's some foreshadowing here.
Yeah.
Really, of what ended up coming true, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. Very interesting in the chapter that they bring out lookout management, and you start seeing those connections that they have with managers and so forth.
Right. And then I thought the story was really cute, too, about after the apartment fire. Well, first that Ben grabbed his fur coat. He seemed to have a thing for fur coats in that era.
Killed it himself.
Sasquatch coat. Maybe he was wearing that out in the woods when he got trampled. But that he didn't have any ID on them or anything, and they had to show a cover of the magazine,
yes,
Rolling Stone, to prove who he was. I thought that was such a cool story to tell.
So as they're going into the Shake It Up, Marion, talking about synchro sound and so forth, that the great story we talked about the last episode about the Rick's stalker.
Yes.
But you know what's funny? I mean, why would Rick end up with the stalker? You would think Benjamin or David would end up with a stalker.
Right, but it was a guy.
Yeah.
I mean, women stalkers, I could understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Hey, Stretch.
Hey there, Stretch.
Hey there, Stretch. Can I come in your studio?
Wouldn't it be funny if they named one of their albums Le Grand Chapeau? Cars, Le Grand Chapeau.
They should have. Nah.
Now, I can't remember what chapter this is in because I just kind of took a screen cap of it, but this warmed my heart.
Okay.
It says, I especially remember one Christmas when Ben grabbed an acoustic guitar and went to a nursing home and sang carols. No one even knew who we were, and it was just the greatest thing.
Yeah, that was Diane at the end of the Shake It Up chapter because they had met and started their relationship at this point. Wasn't that fun?
I would buy Ben Moore's Christmas album, just saying.
Well, but you probably wouldn't like it.
Okay, so Heartbeat City was long and grueling. You've got this awesome picture of Benjamin in the studio.
Oh, my goodness.
Ettery Studios, London.
Seriously, we need to have a moment of silence for that picture because it is off the chain.
Yeah. I'll give him that. He's a good looking man.
Oh, and see it in color. People.
To see it in color at 300 DPI.
You should see
you
that.
Better believe it.
600 DPI.
600 DPI.
Oh,
you know what?
It's
such a great picture. It went from 300 DPI to 600 DPI in front of my eyes. How good a picture.
Oh, yeah. What a great picture. Such a natural. Look at him. Look at him.
And it amazes me how far away he is from the mic. There's that depth perception thing that he suffered from the eye patch.
Yeah.
But what kills me in this chapter is the when they talk about they're out to dinner together having a good time but everybody had their own little space in the house that they rented during this time, and then there'd be fights if somebody's stereo was too loud or over the refrigerator.
Right?
What I wouldn't give to know what the fuck was with the refrigerator. Okay? I mean, it's like college, right? Like, damn it, Easton, how many times I got to tell you to fill up the fucking ice trays? Hawks, did you eat my last ding dong? You son of a bitch.
Ding dong.
Who stole my freaking snack pack?
All right, who drank all the milk out of the container and put it back in empty? Right now, I want names.
This picture on page 136 of Benjamin, it's a good thing they have that's on the set of Drive, so that you understand why there was so much heavy makeup.
Right,
on
right.
his face. Because you remember my response to first seeing this picture?
Uh-uh.
Oh, come on, you got to remember.
No, what
My
did you
response was, "Holy Morticia Adams." Because it's like, what the hell, Benjamin? Are you? It's like somebody drained his blood. He looks so pale.
Yes.
Now, did you see that picture in color?
Yes. It's not quite that bad. Yeah, that's a lot of guy liner. A lot of man,
Guy liner.
a lot of mascara.
Now, going on into chapter 15, when it starts talking about the lace, there's that picture of Ben and Diane Gray Page that everybody has seen, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I think the whole aspect of him doing a solo album, it does boggle the mind why no one had approached him before about doing one.
Right.
And I think it's a very good album, and you just wish all those quote unquote unreleased tracks or the River of Fire recordings or whatever will someday, get a release. I know it's all tied up between two estates and God knows what else.
Right.
But Ben's solo stuff is so awesome.
I know, it really is.
Yeah, and you think about the fact that if it wasn't for somebody being a turd in the late 90s and taking these recordings that somebody was just sharing with a few people and putting them out there or trying to sell them or whatever, we wouldn't know what this stuff was.
I know. Isn't that nuts? I mean,
Yeah.
It's on the one hand, I just think, that was a really crummy thing to do, to betray that trust. But on the other hand, thank you, because I love those songs.
Yes. Thank you, turd person from the 90s internet.
Yeah.
I bet you some of the people are probably interested in the behind the scenes of the Too Hot to Stop video. I would really, really love to know the behind the scenes stuff on that.
Yes. If I ever get to interview Diane.
Yeah, because she was there.
She was. Of course. Well, yeah.
Yeah, and you would have to bring that kind of stuff up in an interview.
Yes.
It's not like you could be at the Rock Hall meeting and say, "Oh, by the way."
Right.
What was the deal with that video? How do you feel about it? Because I'm really truly interested to know. All right, so we're into the the door-to-door chapter, and this picture of Benjamin with the cops.
Isn't he awesome?
I don't know which is funnier, his expression or his David Coverdale hair. I'm not sure.
His David Coverdale hair is so awesome. I love it.
Really?
Yes. It's so 80s. Oh my gosh.
The dude on the left is like Barney Fife's son.
And the other guy is Fred Flintstone.
Fred Flintstone. Yeah, that's pretty hilarious.
And the fringed jacket. See his jacket?
Yeah. Awesome.
Love. And yeah, okay, so you get to this chapter now, and in the chapter about Heartbeat City, I think at the end of there were some quotes about Ben, from Ben saying, "Nobody even really knows who I am." And there was that quote from David saying, "My mom didn't even think I was in the video for Magic." And, again, there's some foreshadowing there of here's Rick, coming out in the front and that. So then you get to door, and you can see where things really kind of start to fall apart as far as Ben being unhappy with how things went in the studio and him not even showing up for the first week. And then, everybody having to wait on him. But then I was so glad when it said that then when he did show up, then he was all in. He performed everything. He didn't act like a jerk, according to the guy that was telling the story. So that was good. But he was clearly unhappy.
Yep. Not a good scene.
The picture of Ben and Judith. Love.
Yes.
Oh, such a beautiful picture. And again, I know it's probably not fair for me to say, but to see it in color, the slideshow that we did for the Vermont book launch had the book photos in color. So I'm optimistic that at some point, actually what I would love to do is publish the slideshow. After the book events are done, maybe, or something, to publish the slideshow we put together. That'd be really great. Because, you just can't keep them under wraps. They're so beautiful. So in this one, he's wearing blue, and it's, gorgeous. Gorgeous. I grew to love Judith in this book. Like, I just have such a different perspective on her now than I did before. And I feel like she was the most candid in her memories and sharing. And I love what she shared. Her beautiful stories about him teaching her to encouraging her to sing and teaching her to scuba dive. And I just love it.
My favorite part of this is it says the day after I arrived, Ben had a surprise romantic dinner and production all planned out for me. Ben, you sly dog, you.
Oh, Ben.
I dig that. That's, real men do stuff like that.
Yes.
That's the kind of stuff you do.
So sweet.
All right. So from door to door, we get into my favorite part of the book.
Yes.
Is, Benjamin's later endeavors in life, and River of Fire, good name for a chapter.
Yes.
Song is awesome. I will go on record as saying I prefer Benjamin's version to Glenn's, although Glenn Burtnick is quite a musician.
Yes.
And I enjoyed him a lot during his Styx days.
Yes, very good.
So in 92, Ben started collaborating with a couple of area musicians. So 5 years is the time period, roughly 4 or 5 years, that he kind of had nothing to do with music. Is that what they're saying?
Yeah. He was out in the woods.
Out in the woods, hunting squatch. And so they're looking for follow-up to the album The Lace. And so it was probably around 96, 97 maybe, that you started getting, no, it wasn't that late. I'm going to say it was 94-ish, 95-ish, around there, that you start getting like little blurbs and forums and stuff about Benjamin possibly, having a new band and touring and so forth, and but that he's just trying stuff out and having a little bit of trouble with the stage fright and things like that.
Yeah. And that makes sense, because I think like some of the songs he did with John Calish's are copyrighted in 1993.
And I think, Benjamin found in John, what he had in Rick. Somebody to partner up with.
Right. Although I don't think the chemistry was there. Yeah, I'm not sure how to elaborate on that, other than I love the songs that they did. I love those tracks. I just maybe it's just because they're demos. I mean, I just don't feel like it was quite the right fit yet. Although it was a good fit, it just wasn't the same.
So many great songs in that group of songs there.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And this is, again, you've got more of Judith's story in here, and I literally shed tears when it got to the end of her part on page 160, and she said, sort of her closing paragraph there about their relationship, and her last line, sometimes love is just not enough. That just was like heartbreaking. I love the story on page 169 about how when he went to play that one show, he wanted a room for himself and a room for his dogs.
Yes.
Good old Ben.
There was a heart-stopping part in here. Oh, here it is. Okay. This part made kind of stop my heart, and you'll know why.
Okay.
It says, leading up to that first show at Hawk Mountain Resort. And the word resort stuck with me. And I thought,
It's all.
oh, sorry. Wrong resort.
Yeah.
Yep.
That'd have just been, wow. And I also thought the story was really cool. I think about them having walkie-talkies and Ben saying, okay, now what are the lyrics for Cruiser? And
Yes.
the guy having to remind Tyler Sweet, I think is who it was, having to remind Ben what the lyrics were to the songs. And it cracks me up because in those later shows, when he's with the Orr band, someone had once said that, Ben plays it fast and loose with the lyrics.
Yeah.
And I always think of that. And so that cracks me up that he was like, yeah, what are those songs?
Yeah. And in there he says, I even offered to get him a teleprompter.
Yeah.
and it's funny because that's how, pretty much Rick worked during the 2011 tour.
Yes. Sweetest picture of Ben and little Ben.
Yeah.
On 167. Oh, so sweet. Look at their little faces. I love it. There's a quote in here from John Muzzy that I thought was interesting too. Again, we talk about just seeing Ben's different attitudes and different sides of him as time goes by. And when I played with him, however, it seemed like that commitment and drive was not coming from within him as much. He had a beautiful son and woman, and to my thinking, he had every opportunity to do wonderful things, yet somehow it eluded him. He almost seemed withdrawn from it.
On page 174, that picture, it says Ben on stage with the Orr band.
Mm-hmm.
I could swear that's with Big People, but obviously not.
It does kind of look like Big People, doesn't it?
Yeah, and plus he's playing the bass.
We'll have to double check. I may have to flag that page.
So then when we get into Big People, as Joe said, they were onto something big. Man, that would have been so awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's such a cool thing, having that super, but that it's coming to an end.
I know. This was definitely very emotional reading from here on out for me.
Yeah. I don't know who posts the videos with the Big People that are on YouTube, but man, there's got to be more footage. There's got to be.
I know.
Because that's professionally produced stuff. That isn't some guy in the crowd with a handheld camera.
At one point, I figured out who the owner of there's a Big People website, and then I found out who the owner was. His name was like Big Chuck or something. And I emailed him because he got back to me and it was like, yeah, there's more stuff coming or I'm kind of working on it. But then I didn't hear anything else from him. Let's see what that was.
I just keep thinking of the quote that Joe said about, when Benjamin passed, we lost our rock star.
Yeah.
And I mean, what's funny is that during that period of time, after all the Orr band stuff, I can remember getting wind of the voices of classic rock, but never had anything other than a picture of Big People. And just knowing there was startup, had no idea, when they started touring or anything. I don't remember anybody saying anything about, Ben's going to be with Big People at this place or whatever. We just knew that that's who he was working with at the time. I dig this picture with Peter Fonda.
Yes, very cool, huh?
Benjamin with his Harley shirt.
Oh yeah, looking like a badass.
And the picture on 185 with Julie Snyder.
Love.
Yeah.
Love. Look at how happy he looks.
Mm-hmm.
How relaxed he looks, Yeah.
And I tell you, very, very nice of Julie Snyder. I know that, when Benjamin passed away, a lot of people sent cards and so forth. And I don't think I've ever talked to anybody else, but she sent thank you notes out to people. I don't think I've kept it, but she sent a thank you note to me.
Wow.
And, just thanking me for being a fan or whatever.
Yeah.
I think I'd sent a couple of things. Like when we knew Benjamin was not doing very well, I think there was a point he was in the hospital maybe.
Yeah, he was in the hospital for a little bit.
Yeah, I remember sending a get well card. And then, when he passed away, then I just sent something. But I know there's people who said that they received thank you notes from her when people were donating to the Pancreatic Cancer Society and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I know that she was so great with Joe in the book. I mean, they have a good friendship, and she has been really supportive even through this. Once the book was done, even through this whole process, she stays in touch, and so does Judith too. But I mean, I know Joe stays in touch with a lot of people that were in the book. Julie in particular has just been such an encouragement to him, and I think they just really got a good bond out of this whole process, which was nice.
On the chapter, The Cars' Last Drive, talking about the last interview,
mm-hmm.
and that that I know a lot of people have said that interview can be hard to watch.
Yeah.
I've never felt that way. I also remember when we were interviewing Greg, and he didn't know how that interview came off, and I'd said no, it came off as a bunch of guys reminiscing about some good times.
Mm-hmm.
Really, really, really good. And Benjamin was noticeably quiet, but he wasn't well.
Right.
Plus, he wasn't much for interviews to begin with.
Right.
But the putting at the top of this chapter, reconciliation. That's the one thing that I think people really have to understand, that there was reconciliation there.
Right.
I think amends were made, and there's certain things that you just can't hold on to forever. And in those kind of situations, that's the right thing to do. I think in Ben's position, your time is short, and why hold on to grudges when you have that. And on Rick's end, you don't want to have a person go away and have that on your shoulders.
Right. Yeah, it was all very touching. That whole thing.
And it's not just reconciliation between Rick and Ben, it's reconciliation with them all. I mean, the band broke up, and I'm sure they all had hard feelings in one way or the other. I mean, if you think about it, when it came to Rick's solo work and stuff like that, Greg was really the only one that stuck with him through that and contributed and so forth. So, maybe there wasn't a problem there, but I just, you would think that there'd be some hard feelings that they had to get past, and that was kind of a cool way to do it. I mean, if anything, Benjamin brought them all back together.
Right.
It wasn't the thought that, we're going to do this for Rhino, or we're going to do this to help promote this DVD. I mean, they knew that this was a special thing for them to all be in the same room together.
Right. And wasn't that initiated? I think you're right. That's an actual fact, right? That it was initiated by Ben. Julie helped set it all up. The idea of the final interview was Ben's idea, which is amazing and wonderful.
It says in here, Ben's final goodbye with his bandmates was extremely difficult for everyone involved, as it marked the end of an era for one of America's most successful rock bands. And then talks about his final public appearance at the Alaska State Fair.
Well, just even calling that section curtain call is so packed with emotion. And I just love the whole description of the Big People family and these guys, just really being there for Ben at the end.
Yep.
That's just a beautiful thing. And then you get into his memorial service, and I was so moved by David's contribution here. I mean, and that's one thing I loved David throughout this whole book. He just really added a lot to the story, and I'm really thankful for that, because from beginning to end, he's sprinkled throughout the whole thing, which is really cool. But when he said, that he learned so much more about Ben at the memorial service than he ever knew about Ben when he was alive, was just bittersweet, and you just wanted to hug him.
I was actually thinking about being in that theater for the Agora thing, and having no idea that was the same part of the Rock Hall that they had the memorial service.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of weird to end this book on a sad note, but that's part of life.
I love the parting shot photograph with Ben. That's actually that's from the Heartbeat City shoot, and that's actually a basketball hoop that he's standing next to.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm, that's the end of a net. Yeah. Isn't that cool? But you wouldn't know that from the photos that actually made it on Heartbeat City. They didn't have the net in them.
Yeah, Ben was out shooting hoops.
Right.
So in the book, I want to give Donna a public shout out for her part that she wrote in the afterword. I won't spoil it and read it, but very well done. And as I told Donna before, so much imagery in that. I think it's exceptional.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then when you get to that index, I've never seen an index like this before in my life. It's the most awesome index ever.
Well, it is just a selected index.
I have to admit, my heart leapt a little bit in the ends because it says what I thought was Night Thoughts, page 110, but no, it's Night Spots.
You wish. I
do appreciate the fact that my Twitter handle is in the book.
Yeah,
wow, very cool.
Yeah.
And then you got the About the Author at the end with Joe's official author picture.
Yes, very nice.
Which we have on the header for the past 2 episodes.
Yes.
And there you go.
Yeah.
Facebook.com/BenOrBook and on Twitter @BenOrBook. There we go.
Yes. And of course now we have a website that we didn't have at that time, which I said at the beginning, but I'll say again, www.benorbook.com. Check it out. Lots of pictures on there and other cool stuff.
Asking you a personal question, where are you keeping your copy? Well, I know where it is right now. It's probably in your hands. But where are you keeping your copy of Let's Go? What prominent place is it in your house?
Well, so I actually have 2 copies. And
Hoarder.
Yes. And one is still in its original packaging, and it's with my Panorama shoes that have only stepped foot in Cleveland. And then my other copy is on my nightstand by my, I have a headboard kind of thing that has a shelf in it. So my books, it's right there. What about you?
Well, I've got the podcast den. And I have up here with my computer my copy of Lyrics and Prose, my copy of Frozen Fire, and Let's Go will go along with those. Nice. I'm a size guy when it comes to books, so Let's Go is the biggest book. It is on the bottom, then Frozen Fire, then Lyrics and Prose.
Nice.
So, sorry, Rick, but your book isn't as big as Benjamin's.
Oh, the jokes I could make.
We're just talking about books.
I know we are.
Like I said, we urge people to get the book if you haven't gotten it already. I think it's a great resource. It's a great insight into Benjamin Orr's life, and we're also happy that Joe allowed us to do this 2 parts and to do the interview.
Yes, and I will say also on the schedule, if it's not already on your calendar and you are able to go, the Cleveland book event for Let's Go has been scheduled for January 12th, 2019. It is at 7:00 p.m. at the Music Box Supper Club there in Cleveland, and it's actually going to be a combined event. There'll be an author Q&A moderated discussion, followed by a concert by the Cars tribute band Moving in Stereo, which rocks. So get on our website, get on our Facebook page, and find that event information, and make sure you RSVP and get your tickets, and we'll see you there.
And I will also note that I will be outside the venue with my acoustic playing children's songs, because that's all I really know on the guitar. So, Old MacDonald and Bingo was his name-o and things like that. So I think I'm going to bring that to Cleveland. I think I'm going to sit outside my lawn chair and and play some, and hope maybe I'll be, earn a few bucks.
I was going to say, I can have your guitar case open. People can throw
yeah.
coins in there. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
You know it's going to be January in Cleveland, right? Do you know what that looks like?
Oh, shit. Yeah. Not good, is it?
Maybe you can get like a barrel and build a fire in it. And you can wear gloves with no fingers.
Yeah.
And
Okay, awesome.
And a knit cap. There you go.
Yeah.
We got you covered.
Awesome. Excellent. All right. Well, Donna, what do you say we end this episode with some Midnight Scroll? We got some scrollers.
Yeah, let's do it.
Take me apart 'cause I'm out of control. Send me a letter on the midnight scroll.
And I will say once again to you people who are on the Midnight Scroll this episode, you need to send me a direct message. Actually, just email, just like you did to get your letter on the podcast, your address, and I will send you some Night Thoughts guitar picks, business card, who knows what else I have laying around here.
Wow.
I may fold up a dinner napkin and send it to you. I don't know.
What a delight.
Who knows? And there's always like little pieces of Legos for my grandkids. I may throw one of those in there just so I stop stepping on it.
Nice.
Alan got his. He should have gotten it by now, by golly.
Oh, I hope so.
So I did mail it.
Awesome.
All right. So I know I have 2 and you have 1, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I will start. And I picked these, Donna, because of ones that you usually read. I switched it around.
Oh,
so
okay.
My first one is from our buddy Harold.
Hey, Harold. Yay.
Harold, yeah. He starts out, "Hi, David and Donna. Happy Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a while since I've written as things have been really busy. I also fell behind listening to the #1 podcast about the Cars." You got that straight, Harold. I started backwards on the album recaps. I just listened to the door-to-door recap. Great episode. I remember being excited and buying the cassette. Remember those? When it came out. I was also lucky enough to see them in concert in 1987 in Gainesville, Florida. Jealous, Harold. I'm jealous.
Yeah.
I mentioned this early, so to comment on David's question, the house was about 80% full. Donna, they did play Fine Line. Ooh.
Oh. Did everyone go and get snacks?
Okay, so here are my thoughts. The album is not their best, but there are many good songs. I do believe the finer moments vocally are Ben's. Agreed. Leave or Stay is a great opener, better than the demo. Thank you, Harold. Thank you.
Wow.
You Are the Girl is not my favorite. I thought of it as an inferior Tonight She Comes.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, Harold.
Don't get on Harold. The vocal pattern.
Going.
The vocal pattern that Dave pointed out is interesting. Fine Line. I used to hate it, but now I enjoy it. Donna, I challenge you to stay awake during the 5-minute song. I'm highly confident you can do it. Everything you say is amazing.
Good.
It was great in concert when I saw them. Elliot's work was great. Strap You In is a highlight. Coming Up You and Go Away are 2 great vocals by Ben. Wound Up on You is one of my favorites. It's a great successor to Why Can't I Have You? Coming Up You fades into Wound Up on You just like Think It Over goes into maybe Baby on Shake It Up. Final point I would like to make is the productions. A lot of the instruments and sounds are mixed together, which is not a good thing, and there's a lot of noisy guitar. I think both of those hurt the album. While it's not my favorite album, I do enjoy it. You asked about extra material. Hard Times, which is on Quick's Change World, and I'm Still Waiting, were recorded during these sessions. I've never heard of I'm Still Waiting.
Oh.
Have you?
No.
And finally, Joe's book is amazing.
Aw.
Thank you, Harold.
Oh, good.
Thanks, Harold.
All right, Harold. Well, we can agree to disagree on some of that, but I'll try to stay awake during it. I'll give it a shot. Very nice. So good to hear from him again. I know he's been traveling a lot for work, so glad he's had some time to himself.
Harold's an encyclopedia salesman, right?
I don't know. Is he?
Vacuum cleaner salesman? Kirby Vacuum Cleaners?
I don't know. He's a traveling busy guy.
I think that's what he does. I think he sells vacuum cleaners.
I don't think he does. Dave! Why do you gotta say things like that?
I don't know. It travels.
Well, why would you travel to sell a vacuum? Why would you get on a plane with like your vacuum cleaner case?
I don't know.
He doesn't.
Yeah. No, he doesn't.
All right. Well, my email is from Donna Ellis. And she writes, "Hi, Donna and Dave. I'm going to say right off." Wait, hang on. I got to get my old lady glasses on. Oh, okay. There we go. Oh, now it's magnified quite large. "Hello, Donna and Dave. I'm going to say right off that I had told myself it would be tacky to email you just to get your guitar pick, though I'd love to have one, nudge, nudge. But when you started talking about everything you say, I got excited because I could really relate to listening to it in the car and singing all the vocals out loud. I didn't like the original version of this song quite as much because it seemed too polished, maybe? I'm not sure the reason. Benjamin always seemed to know what tone to give a song. He just knew it, didn't he? But I feel like the live version has more depth because although, like you said in your podcast, the backing vocals are maybe a little harder to pick up, I feel like they are more haunting because of that. Driving after dark and listening to this good and loud, it's a passionate thing. This song has become one of my car's favorites. Also, P.S. Just got my Let's Go book in the mail yesterday. Thank you for always sharing your info. I'm still enjoying your great podcast, and a happy Thanksgiving to you and yours."
Oh.
That was nice, huh?
Thank you. Yes, very.
I like when she said, "Driving after dark and listening to this good and loud, it's a passionate thing."
Yes.
Yeah, that was a good description.
All right. For our final email is from Superfan BB.
Hey.
Actually, it was a comment on SoundCloud.
Ooh, okay.
So I treated it as that. And hey, BB, I told you once already, give me a mailing address, buddy, because there's nothing that we would love more than for you to record one of your fantastic songs with a Night Thoughts guitar pick, buddy.
Yeah.
He'll probably get that things like, these are cheap as shit. The hell?
Using this thing.
What the hell? What are you sending me here? But anyway, we still owe you those guitar picks, so send me a mailing address. All right. So BB says he's commenting on episode 43. Let's Go with Joe, part 1. It says D&D and my old pal Rico. All right, he's saying Rico. This was another great episode and great to hear from Joe as well as a summary of sorts of the Benjamin Orr book. Up to the Cars becoming a band. And yes, thank you for the mention. And Dave, I cannot thank you enough. Grace Geek, we both have some. Oh, I'm reading this wrong. We have both set up some rules here. I hope your next letter is simply the lyrics to Shooby-Doo. And I'll figure out how to do emojis of it. The humor. Your minion, BB.
Love it.
Yeah, that would be funny.
I know. I have to give him a shout out too. He sent me Exceed, his CD.
Good.
And
Good.
And he sent me Melt.
CD what?
Melt, MELT.
Is that like a patty melt?
Dave.
He sent you a sandwich?
If you're not well versed on the discography of BB, I don't think that you should comment.
Oh! His CD titled Melt.
Yes, his CD.
Okay, I couldn't find that thing on CD. Wow.
Well, he put it on a CD for me.
That's a good one too. I have both.
Oh, good. Good for you.
I have the whole BB discography. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah.
Good. Well, the other thing I was going to add to that was he sent me the pick that he used on the Exceed album.
Oh, very cool. Was it a Night Thoughts pick?
It was not. No, it was not a Night Thoughts.
Because BB hasn't sent me an address to send him one yet. That's why.
No, it was a very well-loved and used pick that he sent me. It's very cool. And he sent me a pick that has the guitar on it with his initials on it. Have you seen that one?
Oh.
He posted a picture of it.
I don't know if I have or not. I don't think I have. But I just messaged BB today and was just telling him that album Exceed is the name of that album is exactly what that album does. I mean, it's my favorite of the three. But I mean, all three of them are great, and I urge people to look up Brett
Yes.
Bassel.
Yes.
Get his stuff, but Exceed is just everything just comes together on that album, and it's just incredible. I've listened to it over and over and over, and I've said before that song "Call on Me." Oh my gosh, I just adore that song, and I was listening to it today, as a matter of fact, and thinking about it, and it's the kind of song, and I know people might have different reasons for loving a song, but that song "Call on Me" is the kind of song. Okay, I'm getting a little verklempt here.
Aww.
Seriously. It's the kind of song that I would want my grandchildren to listen to and for them to believe in me.
Aww.
Because it's just about it's about, hey, you know what? I'm here. I am here. If you ever need me for anything, I'm here. You know?
That's so sweet.
It's an awesome song, but that's how it connected with me.
Yeah.
Was under that. I would just, I got to make sure and play it around them, and so,
Get it in their brains.
Yeah. That's, man. So yeah, that's very cool that he did that.
Wow. Yeah, it was really sweet. It was very sweet of him. So I haven't been on Twitter at all, so I need to get on Twitter and give him a shout.
But he told me that, he has videos on YouTube that, that he's put on there, and that the video for Call on Me has a lot of shots. I guess he went to Auburn, which is very close to me, to record. And so I told him I have to go back and look, and because I make that trek going to see my grandkids all the time.
Perfect.
That's the area there. So yeah, very cool.
Well, we'll have to post that video on the page. I made a note.
I've already posted Call on Me.
In the Night Thoughts group?
Oh, on the Facebook page.
Yeah.
No, we have not. I've got to do that. And I don't think Brett is on Facebook.
He's not. No, he has he does have a page for his music, but he doesn't run that page. Somebody else runs it for him.
Yeah. Well, a word of advice, BB: stay away from Facebook, man. It's killer.
Yeah, I think he knows.
It'll bring you down, man. It'll bring you down.
It'll chew you up and spit you out.
Stay all Twitterfied, my friend. Trust me.
All right.
So, Donna, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Sweet Purple June. You can also find me on Facebook. I have my own Benjamin Orr page called Benjamin Orr Sweet Purple June. And where else am I? I have a blog that sometimes I write on and sometimes I don't. It is www.sweetpurplegune.wordpress.com. Come find me.
All right. And people, you can find me on Twitter at @night_spots. And I'll soon to be freezing my ass off in Cleveland playing children's tunes.
And don't forget to look up. Yeah. And don't forget to check out Joe Milliken's Facebook page for the book, which is, of course, Facebook/Ben Orr Book, and his website, www.benorbook.com.
All right. So until next time, my friends.
We will see you later.
Thank you all very much. See you later.